Hey, welcome back. When we're talking about all this stuff going on here on the domestic front, Democratic primaries and presidential impeachment attempts and president's friends who are being, what I think, unfairly prosecuted, sometimes we lose sight of the good men and women of our fighting military forces out there across the world. And every single day, they're out there fighting for the freedoms we enjoy. One of the men who led them for many years, retired U.S. Army veteran, Lieutenant Colonel Dan Davis, is a great contributor to the show, and he's always here for us. Colonel, thank you so much for joining us again. You're the best.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
So we rely on you for a lot, and you always make yourself available, but I know we've had this ongoing dialogue with Afghanistan. The word is that we've made, some significant, Secretary Pompeo says we made some significant advances with some kind of peace talks. There's even a discussion about a 7-day truce. The part that scares me and makes me think this isn't real is that Ashraf Ghani, the new president, wasn't even included in any of this stuff. You've been our bird's eye on this. What's happening over there, Colonel?
Yeah, this is actually much worse than it appears on the surface because of some relatively late breaking news that's happening in Afghanistan. Just on the surface of it, as you just alluded to, the fact that all this truce and agreement between the United States and Taliban was only designed to start the process of the Taliban talking with the Afghan government. And to date, the Taliban has still not agreed that they're going to talk to the Afghan government. They want them to be one of many pieces, but it's not clear who would even have the authority to negotiate on the government side. But that has now been substantially complicated by the fact that the Afghan government just certified finally the 2019 presidential election 5 months after the fact, and they announced that Ashraf Ghani was the winner. Unfortunately, there are at least 3 other parties and individuals that say that it was so filled with fraud they don't recognize the results, and they're talking about setting up their own governments in contradiction to Afghanistan. Now, just a few minutes ago, actually, I coordinated and talked on Skype with a friend of mine who's in the Afghan parliament. And he said that there are several factions that are desiring to talk with the Taliban and the government, on behalf of the Afghan nation to have peace. But the other components, meaning Ashraf Ghani and several of his allies, are not. So there's division, substantial division, even within the Afghan government. And there's nobody to make a deal with. Now, my big problem is that basically puts us at the mercy of all these Afghan fractions that are talking to each other, and our troops are going to remain there. We need to get our troops out on our terms quickly and let Afghanistan figure all this chaos out.
I know you've been telling us for months and months right here on Liquid Lunch that the reporting we're getting out of Afghanistan isn't on the money, and that what we really need to do is grab all our people and get the heck out of there. You think, while some are framing this as possibly a good sign, the fact that the Taliban is not willing to coordinate with their own newly elected and announced government, that this is even a worse sign for us?
Well, it is, because in the Taliban, they know what's going on. I mean, nobody's more tied in with what's happening in the Afghan politics than they are. They're aware of their substantial strength of position in Afghanistan militarily, and now even politically, because, see, the Taliban are almost all unified. They're almost one voice for the Taliban, with just a couple of small, folks that are kind of around the edges. But by and large, they're one voice. The Afghan government is many, many voices, and they're far from unified. So how can you even have the basis of hoping that you get a negotiated settlement that would lead to a peace which would then allow the United States to withdraw under good conditions? There's nothing of that sort that even exists. Therefore, the only rational thing we can do for American interest is to bring our troops home so no more Americans lose their lives in defense of something that is so chaotic and doesn't even have a chance to succeed. That's not fair to our troops.
Lieutenant Colonel Davis, you're always on point with your stuff. Let me ask you, for those who are listening, we're told every so often the president himself even checks in with Liquid Lunch. What would you do if you had this command? What would be your path to getting us out of there as quickly and expeditiously as possible?
Yeah, I think what the United States should do is to set a withdrawal time schedule, coordinate it closely with NATO and with the Afghan government as it exists today, and say, in this period of time, somewhere between 9 and 12 months, we are going to withdraw. We're going to leave on our terms in a coordinated and professional manner, but you will be responsible for settling your own political disputes and getting everything negotiated with all these various folks. It's on you to determine what happens next. But we're going to withdraw our troops, and we're still going to keep our country safe because of our extraordinarily powerful global ISR strike capability. So we're not putting any risk on that, but we're not going to sacrifice one more American life for the unattainable.
What do you think our main goal is there? Because I can't find one anymore. What do you think our main goal is being there?
Hey, look, we just got to be honest. I actually testified before a Senate panel last week and was asked that exact same question. And the fact is, there is no strategy. There is no objective. We are literally just on the ground conducting operations, waiting to find out what happens next. And that is a horrible use of our military.
So when you see, our leadership talking to the Taliban, I don't think the Taliban would care less if we said we're leaving town tomorrow, would they?
Well, they don't care one way or the other. Obviously, I mean, anything that gets us out faster. I mean, that's one of the other big issues of the negotiations as they exist. I mean, once we leave, we, of course, give away any, influence that we have to keep them from doing, violating whatever agreements they come to anyway. And so why wait for that point to come, which they're going to be there forever. They're always going to seek their interest, however they define them. We just need to get our troops out and not be in the middle of all that.
These are clearly and categorically, in my mind, some of the worst people on earth. What are the odds we can actually trust anything they're saying now anyway?
None. I mean, and that's why I say we shouldn't even try. Because right now you have leverage because you can do drone strikes. You can actually send airborne troops, air assault troops into, do night raids, all kinds of things. You have some leverage. You can fire planes, and attacking runs. But once you leave, you don't have any leverage over them at all. And they're going to do whatever they think is in their best interest. So there's absolutely no basis of trust at all. So why wait for years for that to happen and more Americans to die? Doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, thank you for always telling it to us straight, Lieutenant Colonel Davis. And one day you got to get in here and have one either straight or on the rocks with us at the Liquid Lunch Studios because you're great on Skype, but I mean, we need you in person once in a while, too.
Yeah, look forward to that.
Well, thank you very much. You're a great guy and a great guest on the show. Lieutenant Colonel Dan Davis on Afghanistan. Now, to continue with many of the things that are happening around the world. Next we're going to have on Colonel Andrew Milburn. He's a Marine veteran. He's an attorney. He's the author of the book When the Tempest Gathers. And this is the guy who, right up till very recently, spent the last 20 years leading our special forces and our fighting forces across the globe against ISIS. And he's going to give us his views and a bird's eye look at what happens inside those special forces right